the loan portfolio has increased from 22% to 37%. Essentially, what I mean is the Indian economy has been, as of now, and maybe for some more time it will continue to be a bank-led economy, be it public sector, be it private sector. So, if you see a little backward till 1950s, as the early stages, where from 1901 to 1910, this few 5 public sector branches now, the Bank of Baroda, UCO Bank, all these things came. Then came the Imperial Bank in 1921, which continued to be the central bank till 1934 when the central bank was formulated. And 1949, when Banking Regulation Act came into play. That was the evolving phase of Indian banking. The growth phase started when State Bank was formed in 1955, and in 2 phases, private banks were nationalized in 69 and 1980. The purpose was to carry the banking activities to the hinterlands, to take care of the banking needs of the people hitherto not allowed to come to the banks when the banks were at the private hands. There started the directed lending by the government, by the Reserve Bank. You have the priority sector, 18% to the agriculture. With little pride I can tell for the public sector banks, though now little maligned for different reasons. If India is self-sufficient in the food, the part of credit also goes to the banking sector for financing, not thinking of the recovery part financing to the agriculture of till 1994-95 till this IRAC norms came. There was nothing called income recognition or NPA. We were allowed to finance to the agriculturist. We finance to the micro enterprises. The SSI is come to this level only because there is a directed lending towards the SSIs. Okay, that part is now over. When you come to the competition part, when you think, we have to change. That is, I fully agree with Dr. Bhattacharya when said that there is a paradigm shift the way banks were performing earlier and the banks are performing now, and the banks will be performing maybe 10 years or 5 years from now. Coming to the advent of the competition, within the span of 3 months, close to 21 banks have got the license from Reserve Bank of India, 11 for the payment banks, and 10 for the small finance banks. Okay. So, when the private banks also were allowed in 1990s, everybody thought that, okay, there is a lot of competition, the dog eats dog kind of competition where banks may not coexist, and mergers will happen, acquisitions will happen, but hardly a few acquisitions. As Dr. Saxena was telling, it was the need of our regulatory imperative that one bank needs to be merged because of non-performance. But all the private banks, public banks still coexist. But coming to this type of banks which are being proposed now, small finance banks, they will have the disruptive phenomenon going forward, because they will have a targeted clientele. They will put their products in a perspective where the product will be not one size fits all. It will the targeted product. The process they will follow will be little simpler for the customers to come to, and most importantly, the delivery channel. I think the delivery channel is where the competition will be intensifying in future. And when Dr. Bhattacharya was telling about the wallet, e-wallet, it is, if you see, it is not the banking sector which started this, the e-wallet. It started by Paytm. It's a company now having close to 100 million customers, now got the license for payment banks. Okay. So it is, the banking space is slowly eaten away by, not by banking companies only, the non-banking companies. And I hope this, the new banks will eat into not only the banking sector, but they should mostly eat into the para-banking sectors. Para-banking sectors by mean, not to name, we have so many scams in West Bengal, so many scams in the para-banking facility. If these banks can help the customer, these small borrowers to come out of the money lenders, come out of the para-banking institutions, and tap them to the formal banking sector, the purpose of government, purpose of RBI will be solved. But in case they are not able to fight with the existing players, not able to replace the para-banking NBFCs, then there is a difficult situation. The government data says close to 16 lakhs crores of money is floating. Okay, this can be tapped. If 25% of this money can be tapped, then banking industry will grow by 4 lakhs crores. Coming to a little bit of financial inclusion, which is close to my heart and which I am working passionately for a state called Uttarakhand. The first mile, if I can tell in front of Dr. Saxena, is creating a product or process for the people. We have the products. Each bank has different type of products. But the last mile is the delivery. How do we do that? Through the brick and mortar structure, through the BC model, or through the technological models. Mobile banking. That is what the bank is going to be. A bank in my pocket, when you show somebody a mobile phone, he will show so many applications. All the banks have come out, around 30 players in mobile wallet space. But the largest private sector bank, ICICI Bank, when it has only 20 million customers, Paytm has close to 100 million customers. It is not the way we should create a wallet, it's the way how we can deliver to the people. As of now, we have failed to deliver the products at the doorsteps of the customers. Still we feel that one size fits all will continue. It will not continue. If the public sector bank has to survive, as of now it is 77% market share in deposits and 72% in advances. If even the private sector banks also survive, then they have to upgrade their technology, they have to upgrade their products, upgrade their services, upgrade their delivery channel. What I would like to draw attention, the last time I was with the St. Stephen's College, when a group of students, they enacted a street play on finance and inclusion. From there, I could know for finance and inclusion, it cannot be a push model. You cannot push your products. It has to be a pull model. The demand should come from there. For that, you need financial literacy. That is why, in spite of opening up the banks, if people are not aware what is their product, then there will be mis-selling, naturally. Now a bank, universal bank, I am not talking about payment banks which will be receiving deposit up to 1 lakh, or small finance banks where there is a limited scope of financing. The universal banks, private or public, they are selling all types of financial products. Banking, insurance, mutual fund. There comes the HR problem. Whether a employee of the bank is capable of knowing what is the nuisance of mutual fund, what is the appropriateness of the customer. That is where the Sumit Bose committee has come forward. Mis-selling? No. Slowly, if you see, 2 years back, the number of products mis-sold has come down to very little. So this financial literacy, I request to all of you also, when you know something, please try to spread this financial literacy. If the people are literate, the penetration will be little more. When we go along, we will discuss little more in detail, and I leave it to Mr. San. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, honored to be a part of this panel. Dr. Saxena, Mr. Bhattacharya, Mr. Das. Possibly take a cue from where Mr. Das left and what Mr. Bhattacharya said after, the succinct explanation of what the situation is by Dr. Saxena. Obviously, as a new generation bank, what I would be able to say, we started about 11 odd years back, and maybe it might be prudent to share a few things which have actually changed the way banking has happened over the last 11 odd years of our existence. Mr. Bhattacharya mentioned about technology. We started completely afresh. We were a non-institution backed bank. It started off afresh. Obviously, because we started, completely new, there was no heritage, nothing of that sort. Technology for us became an enabler because we were late entrant, it was access to latest technology, something that came very naturally to us. And obviously over the last 11 years, we've seen through 2 or 3 very, very tough cycles. Maybe not too many banks get to see such tough cycles over a short time span. But one of the things on which I think we have concentrated very heavily has been technology and managing cost. And I think technology as we move forward is only going to make things far easier. I would accede to completely Mr. Bhattacharya's point about the last row, being interested in getting everything for free. That is what you will genuinely see payment banks will do. Because today, and very beautifully Mr. Das mentioned, there was no concept of universal banks a few days back. But now he coined a term which is universal banks. So this is what the regulator is now doing. We are talking about new entities, new organizations. Payment banks will reduce transactional costs in the system. They will effectively start making customers realize how they can save money on transactions. About 10 years back, the Reserve Bank of India started the concept of real-time gross settlement. Not too many people understood RTGS. Today, in the last row, if I ask anyone, do you understand what a payable at par check means? It is a concept which is going to be forgotten. It was a concept when I started getting into banking. I was told when you have a payable at par check, you are an HNI customer. Today the concept is gone. This is what RTGS, NEFT and technology have done to banking. So the most critical component from the regulator side is introduction of these banks, which will effectively remove all constraints and costs from the system for benefiting the customer. That is the point number 1 aspect. And I fully agree with Mr. Bhattacharya and Mr. Das. Banking is facing competition from a completely different animal, be it e-commerce, say for example. How has e-commerce changed banking? Today banks run after e-commerce institutions to get their logo printed on their front page ad in Times of India. Because if I do not have my logo printed there, the people in the last row will start forgetting me. They will say, I don't even know that a Yes Bank exists, or an Axis Bank exists, or a State Bank of India exists. Coming on to the point of asset quality, I would possibly just completely shift and move to asset quality. Now there are talks about NPA levels having gone up. Dr. Saxena mentioned that the overall NPA level, taking into account the restructured assets in the system, well, at the system it's at 10.9%. At the public sector bank level, it is about 13.2%. Now, I would refer to a conversation or a lecture that the Honorable Deputy Governor had given recently, in which he mentioned that the Global Financial Sustainability Report, which is done by the International Monetary Fund, mentioned that 36.9% of India's debt is at risk, whereas the capacity of banks, Indian banks, to take loss is only 7.9%. Now whether these numbers are right or wrong, I don't want to get into detail. Only thing I'm trying to stress upon is there is a problem. Now how do we solve the problem? Too many people will say, okay, NPAs are high. The capital adequacy ratios in the system have reduced over a 1-year period from 13.01% to 12.7%. For public sector banks, sequentially 11.4% has gone down to 11.24%. The matter is we need more capital. If you look at any economy in the world, it has stressed on the need of capital. And what is it that the government can do in this regard? Maybe a couple of suggestions. And my suggestions would be very bold in nature. I would like to speak them out. Create a banking investment company akin to a sovereign fund. Put all your public sector banks under that company. And because that entity will hold all banks, you will ensure transparency creeps into the entire system. whilst there have been some fantastic steps with the recent introduction of, separating the MD and CEO position with the non-executive chairman position in certain public sector banks, excellent steps. Believe you me, I am from a private sector bank, but if this country has to move into the next, growth phase, it has to be driven by the public sector. That is the way we are structured as a country. The spending will come from government, the support will come from the public sector banks. Yes, private sector will play their part, but because of the reach that has come in with the public sector banks, I think it is imperative. Number two, need of capital. Dr. Saxena mentioned that there is 70,000 crores of capital that is going to come from the government side for meeting Basel III of 1,80,000 crores. Now that brings us to the next question. What about the balance 1,10,000 crores? We will have to share, kind of raise it from the capital markets. How do we raise them from the capital markets? Your stock prices of public sector banks, because of some of the concerns that all of us are aware of reasonably well in this room, stock prices are low. You will not be able to get the rightful valuation for your stock. So what do? Take some very simple steps. Obviously 100% FDI in banking is being talked about. I'm not getting down that route. I'm talking about simplifying. Recently the government reduced composite caps in banking. 74% composite caps in banking. But then again a 49% sublimit that would stay was kept in place. Why not? Why should we do this? Let it be fungible, because an FDI and FI investor are similar kind of investors. They are not very different in nature. Believe you me, it's not very easy for me or anyone of us to go down to Europe and the US and figure out what an investor looks like. But in terms of behavior, they are largely the same. Now, if I actually, I'll possibly just take a minute on this concept of FDI, FI fungibility. If I am asking my banks to go down the FDI route, and by the FDI route I mean I have to go abroad, I'll have to go for an ADR or a GDR. The cost of an ADR and GDR as compared to raising money on my own soil is far higher. Point number one. Point number two, if you want more and more investors to be in India, to enable Make in India, please ensure that they transact on our soil. If they are not going to transact on my financial markets, then what is the point of having such a wonderful capital markets or having a discussion on how SEBI should make things better? It is therefore important that we should take these steps so that we don't end up, unfortunately exporting our capital markets, wherein we need more and more people in our capital markets. That is one thing that has to really happen. If you want capital, you have to be ready for this particular step. So which is where I feel that there is a lot of potential for capital in India. Everyone in the world is looking at India. If you look at the position today, all of us know what happened in China. All of us know what is happening in Russia. Over the last 2 weeks, a lot of things have been talked about Brazil. I don't want to talk about South Africa anyways, because commodity is at its lowest at this point in time. What does it leave? It leaves I of the BRICS. Therefore, it is practically impossible for anyone across the world, any investor across the world to ignore or not invest. In fact, ignore is now a different word. They cannot ignore. They have to be in India to make a bang for their buck. So that, to my extent, I think capital, whatever steps we can take to make capital entry into the country far better, ARCs be made 100% FDI, step, fantastic step. Take more such steps to get capital into the country. The inception of the gift city, wherein we have allowed all banks to come up and set centers which will be like which will operate like foreign branches. Great. Why don't we do 2 or 3 more gifts? That will possibly make things move in the better direction. Thanks.
I think we have a very excellent exposition of views from various perspectives on the issues of competition, on the issue of how the technology is driving competition. But I would like to tell you that even with the entry of the new players like payments banks or small finance banks, the extent of the demand for financial services will continue to outstrip the supply. So I don't believe that it is going to give challenge to the existing banking structure. In fact, it will create more opportunities, but it will also increase the level of financial inclusion, because as Mr. Das was telling, he was just referring to a simple point, and I would like to give a small anecdote where there is a felt demand for financial services, which is not being met by the formal financial system. It is a fact. And in fact, when the Ponzi companies started increasing their deposit-taking activity in West Bengal, the first outcome of that was decline in the small saving collections. So that was the first, indication that there's something is going wrong. So, and this sector, some of the estimates suggest that there could be siphoning off of money to the tune of almost 1 lakh crore. It's not a small number. So I continue to believe that although the competition and the technology is going to change the space, change the structure of the banking in the country, demand for small thrift